On placer mining, DFO basically opened up streams to Yukon placer mining so we could find more gold, and it's a destruction of the fishery resources up there. Right now, and Damien, one of our film shooters here, next week we'll be going up the lower Fraser River. We've got literally hundreds of gravel trucks a day coming out of the Fraser River, mining gravel off the Pink and Chump spawning bars in the river, in the Chilliwack area. You know, why is that happening? But this is all about politics. And the belief in DFO, any fish is a good fish. Well, any job is a good job. A bigger economy is always a better economy, and it goes on and on. Greed is now ruling our governments, and not only private industry is also ruling our governments, and that is going to take it's going to make a big hit on our environment. The decision to bring Atlantic salmon to this coast was totally a political decision. The scientists, the managers opposed it, and it was forced upon them. They said, Atlantic salmon are coming to the Pacific coast. You just ensure that's done safely and it won't harm anything. Well, that's like telling your children to go swimming but don't get wet. Despite what deniers continue to say, salmon farming is a great threat, it is a great risk, and it has done tremendous damage on this coast. And even if we go to the southern hemisphere where they've introduced the Atlantic salmon to Chile, it has done tremendous damage there. It has brought the Atlantic diseases to the Pacific. Sooner or later, anemic, infectious and fish salmonid anemia may end up on this coast and devastate not only the Atlantic salmon in the cages, but also our wild salmon, and that'll be a hit that'll just haunt us forever. Why did we ever get in this position? Why were those decisions ever made? And the decision to bring Atlantic salmon here was really stupid, to say the least. Some will blame the Norwegians. Well, I'd probably more blame the Canadian government, really. We have immigration services, and we allow certain people into this country to build this country. It appears as though we don't have an immigration service for fish. Any fish can get into Canada. And we just read in the newspaper about the lionfish invading Florida waters, getting out of aquaria and destroying the ecology of that state and the eastern seaboard and the southern waters of the state. This is happening all over the world. The United Nations has even said probably the greatest threat to life on Earth in terms of wildlife, natural life on this planet, is the introduction of exotic species and foreign species, and that's exactly what the government is allowing. Why would we ever allow the Atlantic salmon on this coast? We've got 8 species on this coast, and we have double the diversity of life on this coast than they do in the Atlantic. We have something special on this coast. It's a better ocean for fish life, for aquatic life. It's more diverse, very productive. Why would we threaten it? Why don't we just take advantage and live with what we have here? Okay, DFO blew it through politicization of the process and decision making, mainly to satisfy our need for making more and more money. It's basically just addressing greed. And the BC government, of course, conspired with Ottawa to promote the industry, and then DFO illegally delegated fish management responsibilities to the province. And when some of us were in DFO, in fact, that's one reason why we left DFO, we could never understand how the federal government could do business like that. And then DFO lived in total denial. And you see I mixed up the two words, DFO and denial. It's almost the same agency now. DFO lived in denial of the impacts of fish farms, and they lived in denial of their legal responsibility. And then, of course, along comes Alex Morton, and she had to take them to court, and the courts agreed. DFO had illegally delegated their responsibilities. Some people now think, well, we've won the day. Now Victoria, which are big promoters of salmon farming, are out of the picture. Well, DFO now has the mandate, but they've been prime promoters of fish farming, and yet they're protecting our wild fish. There's a real conflict there. And if you think things are going to change a lot, I'd say don't hold your breath. You're going to get pretty darn blue, I think. DFO simply does not have the will and the resources to do a better job than what's being done right now, and that's truly unfortunate. And we're going to have to change all of that. We just can't put up with this nonsense any longer. We have to change DFO before DFO will change the way they do business. It's that simple. If we want to rehabilitate the fishery, we have to first rehabilitate DFO and the federal government. One way, and the Cohen inquiry was mentioned, you know, what do we do as a citizen to force these changes on government? It's hard to move a concrete monolithic structure, and that's exactly what the federal government is. And we'll have to take advantage of this Cohen inquiry, and all groups are going to have to register, present briefs. I'm concerned that it might be an overly legalistic inquiry, but we have to bring it down to the level that the common man can be heard, because it's just not about protein, it's about our values and what we stand for, and the existence value of the salmon, what it means to our culture and our spirit. So let's not let a legal inquiry sidetrack what salmon means to all of us as British Columbians and Canadians. Okay, before I close, I just wanted to get on to being a scientist. I've got to mention one little technical detail. When I was in the government, I was always accused of being too political in what I did, so I should try and be a scientist for at least one of my comments. And it's a myth that fish farmers continue to perpetuate, and they accuse people like myself of perpetuating junk science. Well, they're actually better at it than we are. And it was in the Vancouver Sun recently, you know, that they've almost perfected fish production, and they can take a pound of fish meal now and produce a pound of fish. If they're that good, I think next they'll invent the perpetual motion machine, really. They're quite great workers out there. The point is that what they're doing is comparing apples and oranges, and the game they're playing is extremely misleading. What they're saying is that, yes, we used to have to feed our fish 4 pounds of fish meal to produce 1 pound of salmon. Now we can just feed them as little as 1 to 2 pounds of fish meal and produce a pound of salmon. It could be a ton of salmon, it can be a kilogram of salmon. The units are unimportant. But the important thing to appreciate that when they take this 1 or 2 pounds of fish meal to produce 1 pound of salmon, that fish meal is dry food. And to make 1 pound of dry fish meal, it takes 5 pounds of live fish. So if they have to feed 1 pound, it means that 1 pound of salmon, to produce 1 pound of salmon, you need 5 pounds of live fish, which is condensed into 1 pound of dry fish meal. Or if it takes 2 pounds, that means it takes 10 pounds of live fish to make 1 pound of salmon. Does that make sense to the people of the world that are starving? And does it make sense to the ecological system? The oceans are overexploited. We've destroyed many of our fisheries in the ocean. Why would we catch 5 to 10 pounds of fish to make 1 pound of fish that largely middle class and rich people of the world can eat? This isn't going to address the issue of starving people in the world. In fact, I would argue every time someone eats a pound of salmon, you're making the problem worse of farmed salmon, because someone else in the world is going to have 5 to 10 pounds less fish to eat. You can say, well, this is just junk fish, but these are the anchovies, the herring, the hake, the haddock. These are all perfectly good food. If you're a native in Chile, you don't have enough protein in your diet. Why are we ripping off all of the fish from Chile to put it through a fish plant mill so we can raise salmon in British Columbia to export to the United States where people will enjoy it on white linen tablecloths? The godsend in this mess is, and the reason I mentioned the fish food thing, a lot of people think, well, let's get the fish farms on land. We've solved the problem. Fish farms create about 8 different types of problems. If we put them on land, it helps get the mess out of the ocean. However, they'll still need ocean water, and we'll get pollution in the ocean, but it's a big step forward. But the issue is the food. How are you going to grow a carnivorous fish and feed it more fish and come out ahead? You're not. So ecologically, it makes no sense to farm a carnivore, and that has to be stopped. So I don't give a damn where you put the fish farm. If you put it in the ocean, it's bad. If you put it on land, it's less bad, but they're still going to have to kill 5 to 10 pounds of fish to produce 1 pound of salmon, and that is not sustainable, and that makes no sense in a modern world where we have increasing need for good high protein. And I don't look upon salmon as just something that we reserve to feed humans. There's not enough wild fish in the world, let alone salmon, to feed all humans. Nutritionists and doctors say eat more fish. If you get your omega-3 fatty acids and that. There's simply not enough fish in the world for us to eat fish every day, or maybe even every week. We've got to learn to enjoy fish, eat it seasonally, and appreciate what nature has given us. And by cutting down on the fish farming and leaving that 5 to 10 pounds of fish in the ocean, our grizzly bear is going to be a lot better off, our eagles are going to be a lot better off, our sea lions are going to be a lot better off, and this way we can start restoring health to the way we look upon the resource, and health to the natural system, which is probably still one of the more efficient systems to make food in the world. Thank you.